Hello and welcome to the sideboard here at the StarCityGames.com Open Series in Charlotte. I'm Ken Crocker here with Esper Master and expensive sorcery master himself, Shaheen Soorani.
It's a lot of masters.
Shaheen, the master himself. How you doing?
Always great to be here, man. Appreciate it.
So we'll get to the expensive sorcery here in a second.
Yeah.
But to the surprise of literal no one,
Right.
you brought Esper to a modern tournament.
I tried not to. I played blue-white. I played Blink Riders.
I do remember that Blink Riders
I play,
deck.
but you always go back to basics. You always return to the source, and this is the source.
So we're playing Esper Mentor. So you're playing creatures, which is, your style. You're a tap-out control kind of guy.
I am.
So we got 4 copies of Monastery Mentor. Instead of the Lingering Souls that normally would take its place, which you only have 2 copies of. So what ones, how are they replacing each other? Because that's what seems to be happening, is you have Mentor replacing Souls.
Yeah, and actually the original list had 3 Lingering Souls, and actually went to 2 in the Timely Reinforcements as the Lingering Souls package. But yeah, Mentor does take the role of Lingering Souls, and that's why I tried blue-white by itself for a while. But Lingering Souls is such a great card that you just can't cut it completely. The interaction between the 2 is fantastic as well, where you just make an army from 2 cards, and it's great. But yeah, Mentor actually has more upside than Lingering Souls does in this deck. At worst, you're holding Probe the whole time, so you're like, Mentor, Probe you, get your 2 guys. If they bolt it, and that's a big if they do, or remove it, then you just, you got some things out of it, you got some clock threat, you got all these things. And if you untap with it, the upside is just huge. So Lingering Souls is a safe card.
Sure.
Monster Mentor is a much higher upside card.
And then to support the Monastery Mentor, like you said, you got Gitaxian Probe, and you have other cheap spells like Inquisition of Kozilek, Serum Visions, Path to Exile. Now I noticed that you're running a Serum Visions, no Sleight of Hand, and you're not running like a lot of kind of mediocre counter spells, no spell snares. That usually seems to be something that's included. So why no spell snares in this list?
All right, so the blue-white list had 4 spell snare.
Sure.
I found that Inquisition of Kozilek is just a better spell snare. It does the same role that you want spell snare to do. So instead of having to hope they have the Goyf when you have the blue open, or hope they have the Dark Confidant, or hope they have the Summer Bloom, you just have Inquisition of Kozilek take it out of their hand, and it serves the same role. So if you're playing blue-white straight up, you want to play those mediocre counter spells, but there's just no room in this because black removal is just so good. So you're just able to rip those things out of their hand. Black removal later in the game is fantastic, even when they have no hand half the time, because I'm just activating all these prowess triggers and all that. So the spell snares sit in your hand sometimes, spell pierce can sit in your hand sometimes. This deck, like you said, like I like to do, is more tap out, and just jamming every turn.
So you'd said you started off in blue-white, and as you talked about in the StarCityGames.com newsletter, which if they sign up for, they could read about.
Please do.
You went to black, and really, you're just kind of dabbling in black. You're dabbling for Lingering Souls, like you said, Inquisition of Kozilek, but we have a 1 of Tasigur, and then Sorin Solemn Visitor. So now, explain how Tasigur helps in this matchup, and then can you talk to me about Sorin Solemn Visitor, because you're playing a tokens deck, but you're not playing Sorin Lord of Innistrad, so...
It hurts.
So what's the difference here? What made you choose one over the other?
Well, one is good and one's really not good.
Fair.
And that hurts me, because I love Sorin, the Lord of Innistrad. It's one of my favorite planeswalkers of all time. It really, I was playing it in a format where they had Delver of Secrets, and they're just killing you anyway, just laughing at your 4-mana planeswalker. But yet, you gotta stay loyal, because it's just such a sweet card. Tasker in this deck, I didn't want to leave my boys alone, right? We have a graveyard full of stuff.
Yeah.
And it just feels wrong not to take advantage of some of the delve mechanic, how good it is. There's a void that Treasure Cruise and Dig Through Time left in Modern, and I feel like paying them for a 1-mana 4/5 at some point in the game is just really good, and it has been very good. Like just paying 1 for a 4/5. He doesn't really interact in the deck too much. He doesn't have a huge role in the deck. He's more of just oh, it's in my opening hand. Oh, sweet, turn 2, 4/5, play it. I tried 2 again, and you just don't want to have those dead clunky cards in your deck. So that's how Tasker's been. Sorin Solemn Visitor is the icing on the cake for this deck. If you play a Monastery Mentor and untap play Sorin Solemn Visitor, you're gaining just an obscene amount of life. You're attacking for an obscene amount of damage against combo decks like Tron, Amulet Bloom, even Elves is kind of combo-y. This deck just sits there with a Monastery Mentor, because they don't have a whole lot of removal for it.
Sure.
And you're just trying to die. You're countering their Karn, or stopping Ugin with this, or Cryptic Command tapping down their Elves, and the next thing you know, when they're at 18 life, they're taking 22 from your Mentor army. And that's what this deck kind of plays like. It's like a control deck, you're playing all these like doofy control cards like Probe and Visions and all this, and at the same time, you're preparing them for just a one-shot combo kill with Sorin, Solemn Visitor, Lingering Souls, and Monastery Mentor.
I mean, plus Tasigur probably has a little bit of synergy with flipping over Lingering Souls when you actually activate it.
That hasn't happened yet.
All right, haven't lived the dream yet.
I haven't lived the dream yet. I played a lot of matches, and you would think that would happen. Usually Tasigur, he just dies, and this deck is really terminate-proof and removal-proof. The only time where it actually really hurts you is the turn 3 Monastery Mentor, but later in the game, if you play Mentor and you're like Visions, Snap or Probe and Visions and all that while they're tapped out, or Mana Leak or whatever, then you've already gotten so much value out of Monastery Mentor that you're not really worried about it. This guy, he still comes down and just eats it right off the bat half the time. So, but you know what? You force them to have it, and if they don't, then you're good. I've beaten Mono Red many times by being able to just play Tasigur as a 4/5 on turn 2, and that's just a super big body on it.
Well, speaking of Mono Red, you seem to have that in mind with some of the cards in your sideboard. So you're playing 3 Core Firewalker, I assume just for Mono Red and Burn, right?
Right, and there's like Zoo applications. There's like I played against like a Young Pyromancer deck. They're good against that. But you're right, this card is the most linear of all sideboard cards. It's just protection from red. It was much better in my Blink Riders deck that had red spells in it too, because I actually had to read them like, oh, you gain life when you play spells too of red variety, because of course, how many red spells have I played in my life?
That's just good deck building.
I
believe Patrick Sullivan would say.
I meant that the whole time. It was in my whole time.
Good deck building.
Good deck building. And then the 4th Core Firewalker's back in the main deck is the Timely Reinforcements, which allowed me to cut to 3 Firewalkers. I really want to play 4 Firewalker.
And then, the rest of your sideboard's pretty obvious insofar as it's like blue, white, black, Esper control cards, Surgical Extraction, Dispel, Thought Seizes, things of that nature. But let's talk about the expensive sorceries. And I realize expensive isn't that expensive, but we are modern. Everyone's playing Abrupt Decay.
And a 22 land deck too.
Yeah, 22 lands, so the greediest of the greedy. So we got 2 Wraths. We got a Supreme Verdict and Wrath of God. So why the split?
Supreme Verdict is very good against obvious decks that have blue in them.
Elves,
so elves, Merfolk, and all this. Well, in comparison, Wrath of God against elves is fantastic because you have the Azuri, you have Thrun sometimes from the sideboard. So there are regeneration aspects. Also, Affinity has Welding Jar sometimes. So you want to be able just to have that in your deck. They need to respect the Wrath. Okay. If you have just Supreme Verdict, then they can just empty their hand out with Azuri and then take advantage of you. So that's why we split it there. One's better against the blue decks that have creatures, one's better against the green decks that have creatures. And
then 2 more expensive sorceries, quote unquote, because as you wrote in one of your newsletter articles, Gideon Jura you consider a sorcery.
It's a sorcery.
It's a planeswalker, not a sorcery.
It's a repetitive sorcery.
You couldn't get away from the Gideon Jura?
No, and actually,
couldn't do it?
It should have been in the main deck. I don't know. I turned my back on him, and I paid the price, and now he's going right back in the main deck. So if you're going to play this deck, Gideon should be in the main deck because it's just the best after the dust has settled in your control deck card that you need. So good against all the Tarmogoyf decks and things that you kind of are 50-50 against. So.
And then the spiciest of the spicy, the one of bribery. Why?
It was 2, okay? So I had to be very, very disciplined and just cut it to 1.
Of course.
One of the matches I won today was a bribery on games 2. You take their Emrakul, and then game 3 I took his Emrakul again. So sometimes you just can't. And when you're playing
5-mana Emrakul?
5-mana Emrakul. And as a Tron fan yourself, you know when you're playing against a control deck that is not Tron, you know how lopsided that matchup is. You just beat control decks. If you're not Tron and you're playing the control mirror, you are in deep trouble. So decks that have Emrakul, like the mono green ramp deck that has Emrakul, and then Urzatron, and even Amulet Bloom that has Primeval Titans, those decks will abuse you if you do not play a Monster Mentor on 3 and get it going. So bribery allows you to just say, oh, on 5 mana, dead every time. You're just like, just kill you. Take your Emrakul and then attack you. I got to say Annihilator trigger. I don't really get to say that very often.
You don't get to say that.
It's exciting. I get to put 2 lands in play.
Were you attacking with the Monastery Mentor too?
Oh yeah, bribery trigger the prowess. You got to trigger the prowess.
Yeah,
you got. No, but bribery's great. It is a card that. Whenever I play a deck, I'm always going to have gotcha cards. As I think Matthias Hunt always says, Shaheen always loves his gotcha cards, and this is my gotcha card. I love just to play one card and beat an entire deck strategy every time.
Have we tried the bribery Snapcaster bribery yet? Because that would be an expensive
sorcery. But we joked about in Legacy having the Snapcaster Telements Performance, which is my bribery there.
Yeah.
Intuition package.
All right, that's fair.
Fantastic. No, you know what? It can come up.
All right.
7 mana is not too bad, right?
Well. If you're a fan of Shaheen's decks, which who isn't, and you know he's playing Esper, so if you want to play Esper, this is the deck for you. So Shaheen, thanks for taking the time to size him for the sideboard. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it, bud.
All right, you guys stay tuned for more Modern Action here in Charlotte.